So recently, I was browsing the web for all things Star Wars when I came across a very interesting subject which I feel the vast majority of the Star Wars community has been sleeping on. On December 17th, 2020, Lucasfilm released the first ever Star Wars story that is exclusively in Chinese, and it has currently no plans to provide a translated version, and it's canon. So, is Lucasfilm just pandering to the Chinese market? What does this mean for Star Wars as a whole? So, I decided to do a little digging. But before I start the video, I'd just like to ask you to consider subscribing to the channel. My current goal is to reach 100 subscribers, so please help me achieve this. Anyways, back to the video. The exclusively Chinese project is titled The Vow of Silver Dawn, and is written by His Majesty the King, which is obviously the pen name for the author. Now, the author appears to be a very popular one in China, and this new story will apparently, quote, combine native Chinese elements and a narrative style of Chinese literature to tell the story of Star Wars, end quote. And what is even more interesting about the story is that the time setting of this novel is actually set during the era of the High Republic, which makes this the first actual story to come out from that era. Of course, we all know that Charles Soule's Light of the Jedi is sort of marketed as the first story that is to come out of the era, which is meant to kickstart this whole thing. But with the release of The Vow of Silver Dawn, it in reality won't be the first story to come out from that era. So what do we know about The Vow of Silver Dawn? Well, the book is set towards the end of the era of the High Republic, and it is 50 years prior to the events of The Phantom Menace. The book is centered around the main character, who is a Jedi Padawan named Sean, and his adventures with his Jedi Master Mos Dima in the Outer Rim. The main villain of this story is Jaime Branson, who is president of a world called Begamor. The story begins with both Sean and Mos Dima, who are investigating Jaime Branson for corruption under orders from the Jedi Council, despite Branson's pristine public image in the Senate. The story is sort of set to explore the mysterious origins of Sean, and it is supposed to delve into the inner conflict that Sean faces when he is torn between his loyalty to the Jedi Order and his own interest. Ultimately, I believe the story will revolve around a very specific star system, so it is unlikely that we'll see any galactic crises of a widespread nature. And based on the research that I have done, I've managed to find out that The Vow of Silver Dawn is actually still an ongoing series that will release the first 100 chapters for free, and will begin to monetize it once the following becomes large enough. From a marketing perspective, it is clear that this project, for all intents and purposes, is designed to bring the Chinese market into the Star Wars universe. I even found a clip from the Star Wars account on Weibo, which is the Chinese website, and according to Lucasfilm, the story is supposed to bring in elements that speak to Chinese audiences through aesthetics and values. So, is this just pandering to Chinese audiences? Well, I had a read of the first chapter of the book myself, thanks to a Reddit post on our Star Wars canon. I will link this post in the description if you're interested to read it yourself, but I must warn you that the translation isn't perfect, and so reading it won't be without some effort. The first chapter isn't much to shout about, but it does contain a certain gritty aesthetic which I find quite appealing. I think narratively speaking, the book has a lot of potential, and I personally don't mind some elements of Chinese aesthetics in the Star Wars universe. After all, the galaxy is a big place, and so you could almost have really anything you want in it. I don't think that this is strictly pandering to Chinese audiences, although I can see why some people might think that way. But the fact that the story is written by a Chinese author for Chinese audiences, it does provide some level of authenticity to it as a Star Wars story as a whole. From what I've gathered in the first chapter, Chinese elements aren't added in for the sake of it. In fact, the vast majority of the chapter reads just like a normal Star Wars story. As fans, it's important to recognize the global influence that this universe has, and so to see it being developed by someone who, shall we say, is outside the usual choice of creative writers it is potentially refreshing. However, that being said, I find a lot of issues with the fact that this story will not receive a proper English translation. I think this is a massive misstep from Lucasfilm, as I think a lot of the Star Wars fans who have been with the franchise since day one will feel left out. The fact that this story will only be exclusive to Chinese audiences is somewhat unsettling, especially for fans who are constantly and always looking for any new scrap of Star Wars content. It's a missed opportunity for Disney and Lucasfilm to bridge the gap between Chinese and Western audiences, as the exclusivity ultimately just demonstrates that execs over there simply believe that both audiences can't enjoy the same thing. It would also exacerbate public sentiment that Disney is just pandering to the Chinese market, as the lack of an English translation could be perceived as a lack of care for audiences at home. The absence of an English translation puts out the idea that audiences at home can't enjoy a Star Wars story with slightly foreign aesthetics and cultural influences, which just isn't true. It really is just a missed opportunity to make Star Wars a far more inclusive universe. On a personal level, I just want to read it. The High Republic promises to be a very fascinating era, and as a Star Wars fan, I believe there needs to be an official English translation. With a proper English translation, Lucasfilm could grow attention and love for a story and character that has the potential to unite both audiences on both sides of the ocean. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is it just pandering or not? I've managed to find all the original chapters online for free, so if you're interested in reading it, the link is in the description below. But keep in mind, you might need to do a lot of Google translating to understand the story. That's all I have for you today, so be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.